Now, South Africa will be approaching international finance institutions like the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the BRICS New Development Bank and the African Development Bank. This is to finance its shortfall on the coronavirus budget. Yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced government's biggest once-off stimulus package for the ailing economy. The announcement has received mixed reaction from political parties and some members of the public. We get more reaction now from Xolani Dube, political analyst from the Kubera Institute. Thank you very much for joining us. So let's look at some of the most likely effects if we were to get a stimulus package from the likes of the International Monetary Fund. You believe that this will entrench entry of the existing inequalities where the haves end up having more than the have-nots. Why?
Look, we have to ask ourselves, who are we rescuing here in particular? Because if you listen carefully to the president yesterday, there are people who are the recipient of grants, and there are those who are being earmarked as stimulus of our economy. And so we have to ask ourselves that those who are really being earmarked as the stimulus of this economy that people are claiming that is in turmoil are the ones that I think are going to benefit at the end of the day. And the recipients of the social grants, of which mainly are the poor and the black, are the ones who are going to suffer in a long run. Because you have to understand that a loan of any kind is going to be the burden of the poor, meaning that yesterday, an albatross around the neck of the future generation was tightened by the government.
A loan will be a burden to the poor, but can we completely say that a loan is bad without looking at corruption in the same breath, where people who are tasked with making sure that that money does change the lives of everyday people do not filter that money through to the ground? How much is that hurting us as a continent?
As a country was conceptualized on corruption, from colonialism and apartheid, and also post-1994 elite transition, where we are suffering under the ANC corruption. And so corruption in South Africa is systematic. Hence, I would propose that post-COVID, there must be a robust debate on how do we deconstruct this system, because the system that currently is prevailing in our country is a system that is not serving the interest of the people and is a system that is not inclusive. And so if we are not going to deal with those issues, we'll deal with side issues of corruption rather than to deal with the system that keeps on nurturing this kind of people that are not desirable for our society.
I'd like us to get into the president's announcement yesterday in terms of the grants that will be given to people. So child support grant beneficiaries will receive an extra 300 Rand in May and from June to October. And some other grant beneficiaries will receive an extra 350 for people who do not have employment at all or are not receiving any grants or UIF. What did you make of this announcement?
Look, the president was very silent on the middle class, the people who really are paying for all of these things at the end of the day. If you have looked at the document, you don't find middle class featuring. And this is a serious question. But coming to the issue of grant, you have to understand that those grant patronage is still going to be devoured by the same comrades who are perpetrating corruption in our country. And so we were talking about the Gupta capture, and now it seems as if there will be another form of a capture. And so that's why I'm saying the civil society movement, they need not only to lobby for dispensing of these social grants, but they must also be vigilant on how do we make sure that these grants receive the intended target, and also there is less corruption. Because we know South Africa, as I've said, is a country that has institutionalized corruption.
institutionalized corruption. Before I let you go, a final note from you. How do we then fix or build? A lot has been said about how perhaps after this a lot of things will never be the same again, but it seems that for a certain sector of the population things have remained the same. So what happens now? How do we build? What solutions can you offer to build?
Look, it was very interesting for the president to say that it will never be the same again. You have to understand that power is contested. Power is an entity that people need to contest. And so when the president is telling us that post-COVID, South Africa will be a totally different country, we have to ask ourselves, are we ready to contest the power post-COVID, or are we going to surrender the power to the powers that currently are holding these powers? And so that's why I'm saying people need to understand that economy, any stimulus package or anything that is happening in this country, there is political connotation, and people need to contest that so that at the end of the day, they become the beneficiaries, not the recipients of grants or the recipients of unemployment and so forth. We need to be at the forefront. We need to fight for an inclusive economy.